Project Cars 2 was released nearly 3 years ago, and it's safe to say it's received a fair bit of criticism. Since then, DLCs have been added, changes have been made, and with the flop of Project Cars 3, in this video we're going to find out whether it's worth buying in 2021. One of the big problems people had with this game was it not meeting their expectations. Some were clearly hoping for a full-on simulator, which this game just is not. I feel like it could well have been, however the developers have clearly pursued something else in trying to make a racing game that does everything. This is most apparent in the car and track selection. There are 60 locations with alternative layouts that adds up to over 140 unique tracks. There's loads of diversity within the track selection too, with everything from rallycross to street circuits, as well as world-renowned tracks like Monza and Silverstone. Things don't stop getting better just there though, as all tracks have some truly amazing weather and day-night systems. Unlike most other games where you select just one weather and time of day option beforehand, here you can have progressive weather systems. This means you can start a race on a sunny afternoon and be finishing it in a blizzard in pitch black, and yes, they did really add snow here. This makes for some serious immersion, as you'll have to react to the weather changing, and the dynamic day-night system can also really add to endurance racing. In terms of simulation for the weather, well, it's actually pretty solid. While definitely not on the level of Assetto Corsa Competizione, features like rain puddling on the lower parts of the track do make for some decent realism. A similar quality-focused mentality seems to have also been applied to the car selection. There are 189 cars across loads of disciplines. There's everything from IndyCar to Rallycross, GT3 and Touring Car. Now, while this sounds great on paper, and yes, for some people it will be, things do start to fall apart quite quickly due to the car handling, and this is quite possibly the biggest downfall of the game. Quite a lot of the cars just don't handle convincingly or accurately and have very little feel to them. The game's physics are good overall, however it feels like different cars have had different amounts of time spent on them, causing the simulation value to vary quite drastically. Now, updates have definitely brought improvements, however some cars and entire car classes actually just feel well off. It's kind of hard to explain. Now, this does of course have an effect on the force feedback, and it's pretty much the same story. Now, there is definitely potential, and a handful of cars get incredibly detailed and just overall refined feeling force feedback, whereas others, for me, just feel like their force feedback settings have been copied from another car. Sometimes it feels like that car is not even in the same class. Something else I did notice is that force feedback seemed to improve going from a Logitech G29 to a Fanatec CSL wheel, and while this is absolutely expected, the improvement was more significant than what I've seen in other games, which is something to note. Also, if you do have any specific questions, then please drop them down in the comments and I will try my best to get back to you as soon as possible. As for graphics, well, I'd say average is the best way to describe them. On console they are not the best, but definitely aren't the worst, and it's a similar story on PC. Relative to other simulators, I'd say they're actually above average, although when compared to the simcade market, they definitely fall behind. Reflective surfaces and lighting are handled pretty well, and are probably the highlight in terms of graphical performance. General detail and textures, however, are slightly lacking, although for the amount of cars and tracks, this is quite understandable and in my opinion forgivable. Now let's take a look at the content this game has to offer, starting with offline modes. Now, the career mode in this game is actually incredibly good, to the point where I could almost recommend this game solely for the mode. You start by signing a contract in a junior racing series. There's a few to choose from, and some will even have the option for you to sign with the European, Asian or American variant of the series. Once you complete a series, you can move up to the next, going all the way from junior formula to IndyCar, although your career path may vary. Throughout the career, you can also complete one-off invitational events, which unlock as you move up the ranks. The rest of the offline content is made up of the usual time trial and custom race modes, and as far as those game modes go, there are all the options you could ever want. The AI in these modes is also actually pretty decent. They can defend and attack pretty well, and there are difficulty and aggression settings, which is always nice to see. Contrary to the amazing offline experience, online is not so good. Servers are reasonably active, although a full grid of 20 cars is a rare sight, at least on PS4. If you do want to race online, then you're pretty much limited to GT3 cars, which is kind of ironic considering the amount of cars included in the game. Personally, I've had very mixed experiences online. One race everyone decides that brakes are overrated into T1, and the next I may have some good battles. There are also online ratings which can judge how safe of a driver you are. The rating system is pretty good, although I found that a lot of the time lobbies with a minimum rating would end up with very few players. I should also mention that the matchmaking system is just a server browser, which I think many of us have come to hate. There's also an online time trial mode, which is great for those who enjoy hot lapping, as there are global leaderboards, and you can also have the ghosts of other players on track. The online content is then rounded off by online championships, where you can add your friends to a full race series, and community events, which are basically online time trials but with a specific track and car combination which is updated regularly. So who is this game for? Well, for someone looking for a casual but reasonably realistic racing experience, I can't stress enough how good this game is. With just so much content, there is loads to do, and very few people will ever end up doing it all. Controller support is also very good, and there are ample assists and an easy to use car tuning UI. The career mode is also one of the best on the market, and let me just reiterate that there are over 140 tracks and 189 cars. Generally, I don't think these people would be too bothered about the inconsistent handling too, so for this audience I'd give the game an 8 out of 10. For sim racing enthusiasts though, while I can recommend this game, I can't do so quite as strongly. While the amount of content would absolutely be a plus, the simulation quality has been lowered as a result. After playing ACC, Project Cars 2 feels rather lackluster just in terms of realism, and the inconsistency between cars is annoying, but somewhat a godsend as there are at least a few really good cars, and don't ignore that. For sim racers, the weather features in this game are definitely appealing, and can really take endurance racing to the next level, while also providing an experience that isn't possible in quite a lot of other sims. Something that won't be quite so appealing though is the multiplayer, which is definitely beginning to struggle, although if you can find a good community or group of friends, then this shouldn't be a problem. There is also in-depth car tuning, something most casual players won't touch, but a welcome addition for sim racers. I should also mention that on PC this game does support VR, and the experience is meant to be very good, although I haven't tried it myself, so I won't say any more. For sim racers, I'd give this game a 6 or a 7 out of 10. The sweet spot for this game though are the people in between, those who are a bit more serious about racing games but don't spend their lives on iRacing and Assetto Corsa. For those people, there's a great balance of online and offline content, there's good support for both controller and wheel, and most assists have a middle ground rather than just on-off. Graphics are also pretty solid, and the simulation value is good enough for most of these people. Overall, this game will give the majority of people a good experience, which I believe was exactly what the developers were trying to do. It gives few a perfect experience, but there is a lot of fun to be had, no matter what level you intend to play it on. I can see why it got the criticism it did, and I hope I've highlighted this well enough for you to make an informed decision. While it will depend on your platform, region and when you buy the game, it is also relatively cheap at the moment, around £10 in the UK and $20 in the US, and there'll be links in the description to those Amazon pages. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you have enjoyed it or found it useful, then a like or even a sub would be absolutely amazing. It really does mean a lot. But that's everything, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.